Alex pulled into the empty Walmart parking lot, the flickering streetlights casting eerie shadows on the asphalt. The vast expanse of the parking lot appeared desolate, with a few scattered shopping carts and an eerie mist beginning to creep in from the edges. The building loomed in the background, partially illuminated, casting long shadows and creating an ominous atmosphere. The silence was palpable, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves. Alex glanced around, feeling a shiver run down his spine. It was going to be a long night. Alex, a weary night shift worker, pushed open the automatic doors of Walmart. The interior was dimly lit with flickering fluorescent lights. The aisles stretched out ahead, lined with towering shelves full of products. The atmosphere was heavy and silent, with a subtle sense of unease permeating the air. Alex's expression reflected a mix of fatigue and apprehension as he stepped inside, his shadow stretching long behind him. He had worked the night shift before, but tonight felt different. There was an unsettling stillness in the air, as if the store itself was holding its breath. As Alex navigated the rows of towering shelves, shadows seemed to elongate and stretch across the aisles. The shelves were filled with products that loomed tall and imposing. The flickering lights created an eerie ambience, with dark corners and aisles seeming to stretch endlessly. Alex's silhouette was visible, casting long, distorted shadows as he moved cautiously through the store. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, the shadows dancing just out of sight, always at the edge of his vision. A sudden crash echoed through the store, causing Alex to jump. He turned to see shelves rattling as if something heavy had fallen. Products were scattered across the floor, some broken and spilling out. The dim lighting cast dramatic shadows on the scene, heightening the sense of unease and anticipation. Alex's heart raced as he approached the source of the noise, his flashlight trembling in his hand. He found a broken jar of pickles, the green liquid seeping into the tiles. There was no sign of what caused the crash, only the lingering tension in the air. Out of the corner of his eye, Alex glimpsed a shadowy figure darting between aisles. He turned quickly, but the figure disappeared before he could get a clear look. The figure was barely visible, more of a dark blur against the shelves filled with various products. Alex stood at the edge of the aisle, looking startled and confused, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness but revealing nothing. He called out, but only silence answered him. The shadows seemed to mock his fear, dancing and shifting as he moved. As Alex walked through the store, he noticed something strange. Products were floating off the shelves, suspended in midair, surrounded by a faint, ghostly glow. The levitating items cast unnatural shadows on the shelves and floor. Alex stood in the foreground, staring in horror and disbelief, his flashlight illuminating the eerie scene. He reached out to touch one of the floating objects, a can of soup, but it dropped to the floor with a thud before he could. The glow faded, leaving Alex standing in the dim light, his heart pounding in his chest. In the electronics section, TVs and monitors flickered to life, displaying static-filled images of distorted faces and dark figures. The screens created an eerie glow, casting strange reflections and shadows on the surrounding shelves. Alex was seen in the background, looking increasingly unnerved as he approached the flickering screens. The faces on the screens seemed to follow him, their eyes filled with a malevolent intelligence. He tried to turn the monitors off, but they continued to flicker and hum, the faces growing more distorted and menacing with each passing second. As Alex walked through the store, eerie whispers echoed through the aisles. The whispers were unintelligible, but distinctly unsettling. The sound waves were almost visible in the air, creating ripples of distortion. Alex stood in an aisle, looking around with a mix of fear and confusion, trying to pinpoint the source of the whispers. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a chorus of ghostly voices that sent chills down his spine. He covered his ears, but the whispers penetrated his thoughts, filling his mind with a growing sense of dread. A shopping cart rolled down an aisle on its own, items mysteriously appearing in it as it moved. The cart was half filled with various products, and it moved smoothly as if pushed by an invisible force. Alex watched from the end of the aisle, his face a mixture of disbelief and fear. He followed the cart, his footsteps echoing in the empty store. The cart stopped suddenly, and Alex felt a cold breeze brush past him. He reached out to touch the cart, but it was icy to the touch, sending a jolt of fear through his body. Alex turned a corner and came face to face with a spectral figure, translucent and filled with malice. The ghostly apparition had glowing eyes and an eerie, distorted form. The background was filled with darkened aisles and flickering lights, adding to the chilling atmosphere. Alex stood in a defensive posture, holding his flashlight like a weapon. The figure floated towards him, its eyes burning with a malevolent light. Alex felt a cold, clammy hand brush against his cheek, and he stumbled back, his flashlight flickering in his trembling hand. Panic set in as Alex ran through the aisles, knocking over displays and scattering products. Shadowy forms closed in on him, their menacing presence growing stronger. The aisles were a chaotic mess, with fallen products and overturned displays. The shadowy figures were vague and menacing, blending into the darkness as they chased Alex. His face showed sheer panic as he tried to escape. He could hear their whispers growing louder, their cold hands reaching out to grab him. He stumbled and fell, the darkness closing in around him. Alex found temporary refuge in the manager's office, slamming the door shut and barricading it against unseen forces. The office was small and cluttered, with papers and office supplies scattered around. Alex leaned against the door, looking exhausted and terrified. Outside the door, ghostly hands pressed against the glass, trying to get in. The room felt colder, the temperature dropping as the spirits pressed closer. Alex searched the room for anything that could help him, his mind racing with fear and desperation. Ghostly hands pressed against the office windows, distorting the glass with their icy touch. The hands were pale and spectral, leaving frosty imprints on the glass. The room was dimly lit, and Alex stood in the center, surrounded by the eerie sight, his breath visible in the cold air. He could hear the whispers growing louder, the spirits trying to break through the barrier. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls pressing closer as the temperature dropped further. Alex's mind raced as he tried to think of a way out. In the cosmetics aisle, mirrors reflected distorted images of Alex, surrounded by phantom figures. The reflections showed twisted versions of Alex's face and shadowy apparitions lurking behind him. The aisle was dimly lit, with products neatly arranged, creating a stark contrast with the haunting reflections. Alex's eyes widened in horror as he saw his own face twist and contort in the mirror. The figures behind him seemed to reach out, their ghostly hands brushing against the glass. He turned to run, but the reflections followed him, their eyes filled with malevolent glee. Alex discovered a hidden room in the basement, filled with occult symbols and flickering candles. The room was dimly lit, with symbols drawn in chalk on the floor and walls. Candles were placed in a circle, casting a flickering light that created dancing shadows. Alex stood at the entrance, staring at the bizarre and unsettling scene. He felt a strange pull towards the center of the room, the symbols seeming to glow with an otherworldly light. He stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of burning candles and something more sinister. Desperate to end the haunting, Alex performed a ritual he found in an old book. Surrounded by swirling shadows and unearthly winds, he chanted the ancient words. The shadows around him twisted and writhed, and the wind blew papers and small objects around. The candle's flames flickered violently as the ritual reached its peak. Alex's voice grew louder, his words echoing in the small room. The shadows seemed to resist, their forms growing darker and more defined. He felt a cold hand brush against his arm, but he continued the chant, his determination growing stronger. The malevolent spirit appeared, ready to fight back. Alex faced off against the dark, menacing presence with glowing eyes and an ethereal form. The room was filled with a chaotic swirl of supernatural energy, and Alex stood his ground, determined and defiant. The spirit lunged at him, its eyes burning with rage. Alex held up a talisman from the ritual, and the spirit recoiled, its form twisting and writhing in pain. He took a step forward, his voice growing stronger as he continued the chant. The spirit screamed, its form disintegrating into shadowy wisps. As the first light of dawn filtered through the windows, the spirits began to retreat, vanishing into thin air. The soft morning light filled the store, casting long shadows and illuminating the aisles. The once menacing atmosphere started to dissipate, and the store began to feel more ordinary and less threatening. Alex collapsed to the floor, exhaustion overtaking him. He watched as the last of the shadows disappeared, the store returning to its normal state. The shelves were still a mess, but the oppressive darkness had lifted. Exhausted and haunted by the night's events, Alex emerged from the store into the morning light. The sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the parking lot. Alex walked out of the store, looking back with a mixture of relief and lingering dread. His clothes were disheveled, and he looked visibly tired but relieved to be outside. He took a deep breath, the fresh air filling his lungs and clearing his mind. The parking lot was empty, but it felt less menacing in the light of day. Standing outside Walmart in the daylight, Alex reflected on the night's horrors, uncertain of what he had experienced. The store behind him was bathed in the morning light, appearing normal and inviting. Alex stood with a thoughtful, troubled expression, contemplating the night's events and wondering if it was real. He felt a chill run down his spine, the memory of the ghostly whispers and spectral figures still fresh in his mind. He vowed never to work the night shift again, the haunting memories of that night forever etched in his mind.